We are here for the Technical Advisory Committee meeting for June 7th. So we will start by doing the call to order, and Gina's going to go through the roll call.
Jay Collins.
Here.
Danny Jorgensen is not here. Julie Ham or Mark Hudson.
Present.
Hey, Mark. I'm sorry, maybe Danny is on the line. Danny or John Marsh, or Danny or I think Cal Hardy is her backup. Jonathan Scott.
Right here.
Nicole McCleary. She said here. Tony Garcia.
Here.
Jeff Sims.
Here.
Mike Williams.
Here.
Gina Evans.
Here.
Leland Dykes or John Patrick. Bob Fry or Anna Quinones. You guys have to unmute yourself, by the way. Christian Nudis. Deanne Nudis.
I think I'm here.
You're here. Sorry about that.
I'm here. It's okay.
Mike English did call in a excused absence. And Nicole Sutton or Giselle Cisneros. And if I recall, one of them actually did call in excused as well. Okay, that's it. We have a quorum here.
Okay, so that sounds good. So if there's anybody that's part of the committee that we didn't recognize, please speak now. I think we're good. Okay. All right, thank you.
This is Anna. I just wanted to say, because we didn't, I couldn't unmute, but both Bob and I are on.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks, Anna. Okay, so we have a quorum in person, which is great. Thank you all for getting here in person. So we will move on to public comments. So that, at this point, I will open up the floor. If somebody from the public would like to speak, you can either say so in the chat box, and we'll recognize you for your 3 minutes to speak. So I'll give you a few seconds to just to make sure if there's anybody that would like to speak from the public that you're getting a chance. And again, I think most everyone knows how to use this by now, but there's the chat box is another way to be recognized. So I'm not seeing anyone. I'm not seeing any faces looking like they're waving frantically like they want to be heard. So great. So I guess we will move on. All right,
Jeff,
thank you.
Sorry, I just wanted to acknowledge that Nicole Sutton has signed on.
Okay. Thanks, Nicole. Next, we will do the approval of the minutes for the May 3rd meeting. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to review. So is there any questions or comments on the meeting notes? And let me remind everybody in person here, when you're making a motion or seconding, please identify yourself by name to assist with the record keeping. So can we get a motion to approve the minutes for May?
Jonathan Scott, motion to approve.
Thank you, Jonathan. Do we have a second?
Gina Evans, second.
Thank you, Gina. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Do we have any opposed? We do not. So I think those are formally approved. Okay, and in general, again, same kind of protocol. If you're not actively speaking, it's kind of recommended that you remove the video just to help with the streaming for the meeting. Certainly, if you want to speak and want to have the camera turned on, absolutely, we want to see you. But just trying to help as much as possible with the bandwidth and so forth. So I think moving forward, we got the big item on the agenda for today is the Transportation Improvement Program item from Johnny. So with that, take it away.
It's for the intro, Jeff, Johnny Wong, TPO staff, and I'm here to update you on the Transportation Improvement Program update for this coming fiscal year. Jeff, you already kind of alluded to it. It's going to be a long one, so I'm going to try to move through quickly. I want to take a little bit of time focusing on some points that are particularly relevant to what we're asking this committee to do. Many of you were at last month's meeting and have already seen this, but since a few of you were absent, I'm going to touch only on the high points. So to begin with, I want to open up by explaining some basics about the TIP. Again, I'm going to cover most of this pretty briefly, but I'll focus in on the parts that are relevant to what you're going to be asked to do today. This presentation is split up into 3 separate sections. The first one provides a little bit of information on the process, how we produce the TIP and what's required to be in it. Section 2 is going to cover the changes that were made this year as opposed to last year. And then section 3 will talk about the next steps, what happens from here moving forward. The TIP's a plan that has 5 years worth of transportation projects in it. The 5 years of projects that are in the TIP cover the first 5 years of our long range plan. The long range transportation plan that the MPO produced, or sorry, well, I guess it was the MPO back then. 2 years ago, we updated the long range transportation plan to its time Hillsborough. The cover page of that document is shown on the left. The long range transportation plan has a 20 or 25 year horizon. That's a really long time, and for practical purposes, we're not able to cover all of the projects in great detail. The detail appears in the TIP, which is a 5-year plan again, and it's shown on the right. In the TIP, as opposed to the long range plan, you're going to see information about alignments, a lot more specificity about the phases, way more accurate cost estimates. And whereas the long range plan is intentionally broad, the TIP is intentionally a lot more specific. The TIP is one of the TPO's main responsibilities. There are a ton of federal and state requirements that the TIP is subject to. Some of the ones that are key are that it must be consistent with the adopted long range plan. It's got to be developed in coordination with FDOT and HART. It's got to include regionally significant projects. It has to be cost feasible. It's not a wish list of projects that we wish we could do. The costs and the revenues have to be balanced. It has to be submitted to the public for feedback. And in the TIP, I'm going to cover, or in this presentation, I'm going to cover a list of the priority projects. And the methodology for prioritizing those projects has to be documented and it has to be data driven. The TIP is composed of 3 lists. I'm going to spend the next few slides explaining what each of those are and why they're important. The first list is labeled in the TIP document as Table 1. Table 1 is a list of projects that have already been elevated to the status of priorities, meaning that any projects that appear in this table have been demonstrated or evaluated and demonstrate the ability to address an urgent need in the community. So the project is on this list because we believe it will have a positive impact and it either has or will receive money for construction. Projects that are on this list need to remain until construction is complete. This just demonstrates that there's still community support for that project. Table 2 is significantly longer than Table 1. Table 2 includes projects that have been submitted to us by the jurisdictions, meaning our partners like HART, Hillsborough County, cities of Tampa, Temple Terrace, and Plant City. Projects submitted by the airport or Port Tampa Bay might also appear, T-BARTA. We meet with those jurisdictions or those agencies early in each year, and we work with them to identify what their priorities are for the forthcoming year. Based on the projects that they submit to us, we evaluate each of them, and if a project can demonstrate that it addresses a community's need, it could end up on Table 2. Table 2 is a ranked list, so the order of projects in Table 2 means something. If they're listed toward the top of that table, it means that they're going to have more impact on a relevant community need than the ones that are listed a little bit further down that list. I'm going to explain Table 2 in significantly greater detail a little bit later in this presentation. Table 3 is the longest of the 3. The list includes FDOT projects from the current work program. It includes requests that we get for planning studies or Maybe also, it could also include some projects that don't fit neatly into our other programs. It can include projects that come from each of the jurisdiction's capital improvements program. And for projects that come from each jurisdiction's CIP or capital improvements program, the TPO doesn't really control what projects are in there. We don't have much or any control over what projects are funded with local dollars. So we're not required to include those projects in the TIP, but we do because we think that it will assist with coordination in the future. All right, going back to table 2 for a second. I already mentioned that TPO staff meet with staff from each of the jurisdictions early in the year, typically around February or March. When we meet with the agencies, they tell us what priorities they will have for the upcoming year. This also is an opportunity for them to tell us if projects listed on our priority list are no longer priorities, in which case we might pull them off. At the culmination or the conclusion of that meeting, the jurisdiction staff sends us a list of potential projects that they want to add to the priority list. Once we have all of those projects, we sort them into one of our 5 investment programs. The icons for those programs are shown here on the right. I'm kind of scrolling over them with my mouse. The top program with the red icon is State of Good Repair. That's mostly infrastructure projects. You'll see a lot of pavement resurfacings, bridge repair, some transit asset maintenance projects in there. Further down in the orange is Vision Zero. Those are all our safety projects. Then smart cities. These are congestion or reliability improvement projects, typically intersection projects, but some others as well. And then further down is real choices when not driving. That's the blue. Those are multimodal projects. And then lastly, the major projects. Anyway, so once we get these lists of projects that the agencies want us to add to the priority list, we sort them into one of those 5 program areas. We try to identify the best data set to evaluate the impacts of the project. And then based on the results of our analysis, we'll rank them. So like I said, projects that are listed toward the top have been shown to have a more significant impact. And as you move on down the list, the impact decreases a little bit. Aside from the evaluation score or the analysis, the results of the analysis or the assessment, some other resources in table 2 that might provide you with more information is this column that I've circled with that red circle or that red oval. This is a list of suggested funding types. So TPO staff, once we finalize the list of projects in table 2, we'll go through and try to match relevant fund sources with or relevant projects with the most appropriate source of funds. There are a ton of fund codes in this column. Some of the ones that appear more frequently are SU funds. Those are really flexible and can apply to a lot of different projects. Others are a little bit more specific, and the types of projects that they can be applied to are a little bit more specific. TA, transportation alternatives, is another one that shows up a lot. Those apply to smaller multimodal projects like bike ped facilities. You'll see Sun Trail on there, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. That's a state program that provides funds to help close gaps in the statewide trail network. So there are at least 3 requirements to be eligible for that source of funds. Another informational source that we've put together in this year's TIP is the tool that I'm showing on the slide in front of you now. It's accessible via that link toward the top. This is our TIP tool. It's a mapping tool showing all of the projects in the currently adopted TIP. And what we've done this year is we've added some additional layers of demographic information so that based on the geographic distribution of projects in the TIP, you can get a sense of where they're located in the county and whether or not it's a community that has a high proportion of racial or ethnic minorities or maybe low-income households. It's somewhat of a proxy for an equity analysis. Right, that wraps up section 1. So that's most of the info that you'll need to do a good job of understanding the projects that are in the TIP. In the second section, I'm going to cover all of the changes that we've made this year compared to last year's tables. So to begin, this is table 1. This had a major overhaul this year. The previous year's table 1 was a little bit disorganized. It wasn't structured in any relevant way. Projects were just kind of added to the table haphazardly. So this year we made an effort to organize it according to the impact of the projects. We color coded them in a corresponding way to the 5 investment programs that we have. We had to add another color because some of the projects fall into a miscellaneous category. So all of the projects on tables 1, 2, and 3 are either red, orange, purple, blue, green, or gray. And this year on table 1, 10 projects were removed from the list because they were completed. Among those are the Marion Transit concrete improvements. Bush Boulevard had a resurfacing project that was completed, so it was pulled off. Maintenance to the streetcar track. There were some safety projects around elementary schools in Plant City, I believe, Stowers and Summerfield. There were a couple intersection or congestion projects that were completed, an ATMS project on Courtney Campbell Causeway, intersection improvements on Dale Mabry from Sly to Van Dyke. There were 2 transit projects. One was the Hart Airporter, and some funds were also dedicated to the Cross Bay Ferry for operations, and a major capacity project on Bruce B. Downs from Pebble Creek Drive to County Line Road. A few projects were removed from table 1 at the request of implementing agencies. First was a safety project on Rome Ave. Second is a trail project along the Selman Greenway from 17th to 19th Street, and some segments of Green Artery of the Green Artery. Those projects were removed because they have either been completed or, in the case of the Selman Greenway, I believe, Anna, you can chime in later if I'm misstating this, but I believe that there were some issues and that needs to go back to design to take care of those. The segments of the Green Artery are moving forward. I think segment D is near completion and segment E is in design. Many projects were added to table 1 this year because they have secured funding for construction. They're moving forward. Remember that this table is just a list of priorities that have received funding for construction, of priorities that have received funding for construction. There's a longer list of projects that have received funding but are not priorities in table 3, and I'm going to show that later. But some of the projects that were added to table 1 this year are bus replacements for Hart, bus stop capital repairs, maintenance of the T-BARTA Vanpool fleet. There were several resurfacing and bridge repair projects. A segment of Fowler Ave from Florida to 56th is getting safety treatments. A wider segment of Fowler Ave from I-275 to I-75, and a couple phases of the Green Spine. There's a intersection improvement project on US 41 at Palm River Road. Several segments of the Tampa West Riverwalk are getting multimodal enhancements, and a major capacity project on Rio Street to connect Howard Franklin Bridge trails to the trail system in the county. All right, so that pretty much wraps up table 1. Table 2 is where we spend the majority of our time putting this list together for tip production. This part of the tip requires the most time and effort on our behalf and also your behalf to evaluate. As I've already mentioned, table 2 is a list of priority projects that are seeking funding, and we have a bunch of performance targets that are related to each of these priorities. Each year, the committees and the TPO board approve performance targets for safety, and every 2 and 4 years, they either evaluate or adopt targets related to state of good repair and resilience. So when we presented this information to the committee back in 2018, you all helped the TPO board adopt targets for maintaining interstate pavement in good condition and bridges in good condition. And we believe that if we prioritize projects in the tip, they will make progress toward improving our the condition of our pavements and bridges, as well as transit assets. So this year we added a project at Hart's request to add some money for the repair and replacement of the heavy maintenance facility. Hart staff requested $65 million to replace that facility. That's obviously a really huge project, so Hart staff is working now to break that project into a series of smaller projects that could be funded with smaller amounts of money. That project's Hart's top priority. And the reason why we added it was not just because Hart requested it, but because we're already well aware that there's a huge backlog of maintenance projects for pavement, bridges, and transit asset maintenance. Each year, we just end up allocating about $4 million in SU funds, and Hart typically uses that for bus replacements or bus stop capital repairs. All right, so that is the first investment program, State of Good Repair and Resilience. The second one is Vision Zero. This investment program targets safety projects. And each year we present an update toward the end of the year talking about how we performed regarding our crashes. We focus a lot of time and attention on identifying hotspots for fatalities and injury crashes. And these are the targets, or these are the criteria that we use to rank any projects that come through our tip that pertain to safety. So as we're getting lists of projects that the agencies want us to add as safety priorities, what we're doing is taking a look at least 5 years worth of crash data, pulling out all of the crashes that result in either a fatality or a serious injury, and adding those up and then dividing by the number of centerline miles for each of these safety projects. And then based on the result, we rank them. So you see that the project ranking the highest this year, or the new project ranking highest this year, is street project on Dale Mabry from West Mango Ave to West Pearl Ave. And then there's a complete street project on West Shore from Kennedy to Boy Scout. Those are the two top scoring projects. And then as we're making our way down the list, the impact decreases slightly. The third safety project that was submitted this year that made it to the list is one on SR 574. I think that's MLK Boulevard from US 301 to Turkey Creek Road. There's a sidewalk project around Tomlin Middle School in Plant City, another sidewalk project around Marshall Middle School in Plant City, another safety project on Lois Ave from Kennedy to Boy Scout Boulevard. There are two safety projects in Temple Terrace, one on Bullard Parkway from Glen Arvin 78th Street, and another one on Davis Road from Morris Bridge to Temple Terrace Highway. There's another safety project in Tampa from West Shore on West Shore Boulevard from Fair Oaks Ave to Neptune Way, and finally Ashley Drive from Tyler to Laurel Street. The third investment program is Smart Cities. This focuses on improving reliability or reducing congestion. The projects that fall into this category are somewhat disparate, that's what I meant to say. They're very different is the point I'm trying to make. And so we have to find many different ways to evaluate the impacts of these projects, because it's really difficult to compare an intersection improvement with scheduling software. So some of the metrics, or not metrics, some of the performance measures that we take a look at are peak period travel time index, delay in minutes. If it's a project at an intersection, we look at the delay upon quarter miles or quarter mile approach. We can also look at delay within 1 square mile of a specific location. And for some transit projects, specifically ITS projects, we'll look at on-time performance. So there were 3 additions to the Smart Cities program this year. All 3 of the top ones are intersection improvements at Alexander Street and Jim Johnson Road, then Alexander Street at James Redmond Parkway, and then South Park Road at Coronet. Lastly, we had the request from Hart to add some scheduling software that will improve on-time performance, because it allows the agency to better track the locations of vehicles and better schedule pickups and drop-offs. The next investment program is Real Choices When Not Driving. This is focused on multimodal enhancements. Some of the criteria that we look at in ranking these projects are population density, within a short walking distance of a trail or a side path. We also can look at population density within a bus route that has frequent bus service. Some of the projects that were added this year include a request from City of Tampa to fund 14th Street North, which runs parallel to the Green Spine. Another project to fill in a gap on the Adamo Drive Greenway from 22nd Street to 34th Street. A project in Temple Terrace to construct a footbridge on Whiteway Drive that is capable of supporting low-speed electric vehicles like golf carts. And then finally, the South Tampa Greenway at Picnic Island Park, which is also a regional priority, as is the Adamo Drive Greenway gap. Lastly, the major capacity projects. We had a number of additions this year. Some of the criteria that we look at in ranking these projects are employment density. So the first thing that we take a look at is, are these projects actually allowing folks to get to their workplace or to get to employment centers? The second thing we take a look at is volume to capacity ratio, which gives us an indication of how congested the corridors are and how desperately the projects are needed to improve traffic flow. We also take a look at delay reduction per center line mile, and this gives us a really good idea of the impact of the project if it were to be constructed. Projects that fit into major capacity or major investments for economic growth are typically high dollar value projects, so some of the more expensive projects fall into here, as well as any projects that are traditional capacity enhancers like adding lanes to a corridor, and also some mass transit projects. So this year we added a project, we added 5 projects. At the top of the list is the West Shore Interchange. That's a major reconstruction that we're all familiar with. We also added the North-South Metro Rapid construction, aka the Tampa Arterial BRT. We added Brush Street from Whiting to Kennedy Boulevard. That project is related to the Water Street development in downtown Tampa. We added a widening project on Gibsonton Drive from I-75 to US 301, and another widening project on Big Bend Road. These are the bookends of a corridor that extends from US 41 to 301. The bookends are US 41 to Covington Garden Drive, and then on the east side from Simmons Loop to US 301. Some projects that have been programmed this year, as in they're receiving funds in the next 5 years, but are not necessarily priorities, but still notable projects include Hart's Route 11, getting some funds to continue bus service or to provide bus service. There's some intersection improvements at several locations in South County. There are some safety enhancements on Twiggs in downtown. Tampa Street and Florida Ave and Tampa Heights are getting safety projects, and there's another one on Bush Boulevard in Forest Hills. In summary of Table 3, because there are a ton of projects in there, there are more than 100 projects that maintain pavement or rehabilitate or rehab bridges. There are a ton of transit asset maintenance improvement projects in there. In some, there's about 40 safety projects, about 30 reliability or congestion relief projects, 13 multimodal, and 23 major projects for economic growth, as well as a handful of projects that don't neatly fit into those categories, but are still loosely related to transportation, like pesticide, herbicide applications, maintenance of the landscaping, things like that. This pie chart that's shown on the screen shows a breakdown of how funding is allocated according to the 5 investment programs in that miscellaneous category. You'll see that the majority of funds are allocated to major investment for economic growth investment program. And then following that is state of good repair and resilience, mostly because those projects are numerous. Like I mentioned, in state of good repair, there are over 100 projects to improve pavement resurfacing and to rehab some bridges. On the screen, I've included a snapshot of some projects receiving new funding this fiscal year. This is actually a screen grab of the flyer that we mailed out to residents who are living near locations, receiving new projects this year. I've already covered most of these in the previous slide, but a couple of major projects that I also want to mention right now are corridor management projects along I-4 from central Tampa to the Polk County line. That's a really big project that I'm sure most of us are familiar with, called the I-4 frame. The goal of that project being to deploy some technologies that allow the district to relieve congestion on I-4 without widening it. And another major project on I-4 is at the I-75 interchange between Orient and Mango Road. District 7's modifying the ramps and adding auxiliary lanes to improve merging at that interchange. That wraps up section 2. So the final section is next steps. I'm going to cover the results of our equity analysis and then talk to you about what happens following my presentation now. So this slide is it's showing a table that we produced for our equity analysis. Specifically, the type of equity analysis we did was environmental justice. And the environmental justice executive order requires us to look at disparate impacts that take place on communities that have high proportion of low income neighborhoods, racial and ethnic minorities. And so we took a look at what proportion of the county's total population is made up of folks living in communities with a high proportion of racial minorities, ethnic minorities, low income neighborhoods. The standards are shown in this column right here. So the number of people in the county living in a neighborhood with a high proportion of racial minorities, 17.8. People living in ethnic minority neighborhoods is 18.4, and low income neighborhoods is 16.1. We took a look at how many miles of projects are invested in those neighborhoods. And if a higher proportion than the county standard is invested in those neighborhoods, they get a green cell. That indicates that a higher proportion than 17.8, 18.4, 16.1 is invested. This is what we use to evaluate projects falling into the state of good repair and resilience, Vision Zero, Smart Cities, and Real Choices programs. The reason why we chose not to highlight the major capacity projects is because those are typically either mass transit projects or highway widenings. And it's not objectively true that bringing a project like that to your neighborhood is considered a benefit. So rather than color coding it either red or green, we just chose to highlight that cell showing that 32% of the total miles of major capacity projects are located in low income neighborhoods, which only comprise 16% of the county's total population. So roughly double the standard. In addition to the equity analysis, we also have to coordinate a lot of projects appearing in Hillsborough TPO's TIP with priority lists for regional projects. So we're currently coordinating with the other MPOs and TPOs across the Tampa Bay area to finalize lists of regionally significant projects. Each year we do this, we get together with all of our partner MPOs and TPOs, identify projects that we believe will have an impact on regional travel or for trail projects if they will help complete the statewide bike network. It's really important for us to coordinate these lists with the other counties because we want to make sure that all projects are consistent with not only the goals of our county, but the needs of the region, and that we're not choosing to prioritize projects that benefit one county to the detriment of another. Also, there's financial reasons. So to be eligible for certain types of funding sources, projects in the Hillsborough TPO have to be prioritized in our TIP and the regional priority lists that are going to be adopted on June 25th. There are at least 3 regional or lists of regional projects. The first one that I want to talk about is the Transportation Regional Incentive Program, aka TRIP. TRIP is a funding source that applies to projects that will improve regional travel and commerce. Over the past couple of months, I led an initiative with the other TPOs to produce an updated list. So we went through the list of 10 priorities. We crossed off all the ones that were constructed recently or that the counties are no longer looking to move forward as priorities. The top priority on this regional list is the West Shore Interchange, and there was a request by Hillsborough County to add a new submission and potentially add that to the trip priority list, and as well as add it to the Hillsborough TPO's priority list. That is Big Bend Road, those bookends that I mentioned. This is what the project looks like. It's a widening project to add 2 lanes at the bookends. The center portion that is not highlighted in yellow is where Big Bend intersects with I-75. It's not included because the county has already received some funding. I believe it's a combination of local, state, and federal funds. So because some funds have already been received, and it was formerly on the trip priority list, it's not a part of this project. This one is only for the bookends, and the county's requesting $13.8 million to go ahead and construct those. The second regional priority list is trail projects. The acronym for this is the Regional Multi-Use Trail Priorities, aka the MUT list. There are 20 projects, and this information is fresh as of 20 minutes before I started talking. So this list is finalized and needs to be approved by the Suncoast Transportation Planning Alliance. I believe that's the correct acronym. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But of the 20 trail projects on this list, 9 of them are located within Hillsborough County. The number 2 project on this list is the South Tampa Greenway, followed by the Bypass Canal, which is Temple Terrace's top priority, followed up by Hillsborough County's request to complete the South Coast Greenway. You'll also see Gandy Bridge, filling in a gap on Adamo Drive, Dale Mabry Overpass, Upper Tampa Bay Trail, Howard Franklin Bridge, and the connections to the street. And rounding out the end of the list is Maydale Bridge. Again, all 9 of those are regional priorities, but they're also located within Hillsborough County. And then finally, the last list that we need to cover is major regional priorities. These projects are candidates for statewide funds, and of the 9, 3 of these projects are located within Hillsborough County boundary. Number 2 project on this list is the Downtown Interchange Safety Fix. Number 3 is I-75 at Gibsonton Drive interchange improvements. And lastly, Hart's study on acquiring the CSX right-of-way. The draft tip and tables have been presented to you last month. We're presenting them again now. They're already posted on the tip webpage. Aside from after this, we're going to open it up for discussion, but you can also leave comments on Facebook, Twitter. We have a hotline open to receive voicemails. We've been receiving emails from citizens who want to leave comment about specific projects. The tip hearing is going to be held on Wednesday beginning at 6 p.m. Following that tip public hearing, we're anticipating that the TPO board will approve this year's update. And so this is an action item. We're requesting that the TAC approve the updates to this year's TIP and approve the trip, or not the trip, and approve the tip priority list, which is table 2. And I'm going to turn it over to you all to ask any questions. I'll be happy to answer whatever questions you have.
Okay, sorry, I had to unmute myself there. Okay, thank you very much. That was certainly comprehensive, and let me kind of start before I open it to the group of saying that I personally, and I think I speak for the group, very much appreciate the thoroughness with which you went through this, because this can be complicating. I like section 1 where you broke down, because that's always a question, you know, what is it, but more so, how do we get to where we're going? And to see, especially the last couple of years where you've evolved these metrics, and you know, to see them actually being used and in play to develop these projects, and showing that there's a whole kind of scientific basis for what you're doing as much as possible is appreciated. And then as I mentioned last month, the breakdown of the list, you know, to the 1, 2, 3, I think it makes it much easier to follow than maybe it's been in previous years. And this is certainly a big project. I'm going to open it to the group. For me personally, I mean, I have limited knowledge on a lot of these projects, but probably the two things that I was looking most for to see if it would be part of this list based on where I travel. And this is just personal because I happen to live kind of that side of the county maybe, so I see it more. But the Gibsonton Avenue expansion is certainly something that needs to move forward because that I witnessed it firsthand many times. And then that's in combination with the Big Bend bookend you talked about. So seeing those in place, they're part of Table 2 now, I would wholeheartedly support them to be part of that list. From there, I will move on to opening it up to comments and questions from the committee.
This is Leland.
Hey, Leland, go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon. I pasted a comment in the chat, and yeah, I agree with your comments, just excellent. It was regarding the regional trail priorities, and I know Maydell Bridge is on there. I saw that Maydell Bridge is on there, and I didn't know if that's an old request or is that recent and been updated, because I know that the bridge is under construction now, and I think it does include a trail component. And maybe this is for connection from the south side of the bridge south to the regional trail system, or was this to go partially fund the bridge, but the bridge has been funded, it's under construction. So I just wanted to bring that up. I don't know the answer myself, so I was posing that as a question.
Yeah, thanks, Leland. I'm actually going to turn this over to Wade. I see he's on the call. I don't remember seeing the Maydell Bridge project being listed on last year's MUT list. So as far as I know, it's a new addition for this year. But if I'm wrong, I'm sure Wade will correct me.
Yes, sir. It was on last year, and it is only on there until construction is completed. It's shown on the list as programmed.
Okay, thank you.
Could you identify yourself, please?
Apologies, Wade Reynolds, Hillsborough TPO staff.
Okay. Do we have any other questions or comments? This is a big topic, so now is your time to speak forward if you have any comments on what's the list. I think Gina's she has a comment that she'd like to make.
Hi, I would have liked to wait to any other members, and I know it's kind of weird when I'm asking my colleague questions about this, but I had a couple questions, Johnny. The the Table 3 is funded, but not on priorities. Is there a way, or is there a reason why we haven't emphasized to the applicant to instead fund projects that are on our priority list and, like use that effort and time, unless it's maybe funded through their own means? So that was my first question. It's not something maybe that you can even answer, but I was just kind of wondering why we have so many there instead of funding more on 2.
Yeah, we definitely work with staff from the jurisdictions to try to let them know whether we believe a funding source would be applicable to the projects they want to move forward. There could be a bunch of reasons why they opt to use local funds instead. I mean, for one, like a federal project requires so much paperwork that some agencies decide it's not even worth it. Other projects, they might be expedited to completion because they decide to use local funds rather than entering into a competitive process. I guess what I'm trying to say is like the context really matters. It was hard for me to give a one-size-fits-all answer, but we would definitely welcome more coordination between us and the agencies. If they're encountering problems and they think like, hey, we don't want to go after this source of funds, we could work with them to figure out why and see if there's a workaround strategy.
Great. That's a great answer. Mike is going to add something, I think, right?
I know sometimes, at least for Hillsborough County, on projects that we fund, we don't want like sometimes federal funds come with all sorts of strings and things that we don't really want to have to deal with. So that's why sometimes we fund them on our own and we don't ask for federal money.
I think I was not realizing quite clearly that, oh, this is Gina Torres and that was Mike Williams.
Oh, sorry, yes.
That Table 3 really is local funds then. Because then that makes total sense to me. If
The-
table 3 is
yeah,
local.
it's the DOT work program plus projects from the CIPs.
Okay. The only other question I had,
That could be like SIS projects that aren't a local priority necessarily, like say the interstate or something, or for the DOT projects.
totally makes sense. The other thing, Johnny, I was just wondering, you know, when you did that, this is green or red as far as the equity impacts of the projects, you know, you didn't want to rank the one that was, or it just wasn't clear, the major projects, I guess. Yeah, that page. You know, I'm just going to put it in my simple terms. If it's a major transit project equals good for to me, it's good for that community. And if it was a major project like widening a roadway through there, doesn't, you know, equals kind of bad, let's say. And to just not break those out, it might make there might be more support for those because it really is doing something good.
I'll say two things on that. The first is to beg your forgiveness. This is really the first cut at doing this kind of assessment. In the past, we've just kind of mapped projects onto the demographic data, produced a map and said, here are the results. This is really our first attempt at creating a more sophisticated equity analysis. So we're still working through a lot of the kinks, as I mentioned. You know, major capacity is the one that's really creating a little bit of a stumbling block. But secondly, as we're looking through some of the public comments about mass transit projects, it didn't seem that the jury or the verdict was out on whether or not a mass transit project is going to be welcomed by the entirety of the community. We've seen some examples of folks saying, this may be one step toward property values increasing in my neighborhood because we're going to be so close to a transit hub that there's potential for gentrification. And I'm not saying that that's true necessarily. I'm just saying that members of the community may not objectively see this as a benefit.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good point because I actually was looking at this graph and thinking the same thing because like, for example, total vision zero projects, it's a great thing that there's a high percentage in the lower income communities because that's a direct benefit to them. But you could conversely look at the major capacity and say, well, you know, increasing a huge roadway running through is not necessarily what I want. So I totally appreciate the difficulty in trying to get a kind of a good assessment on this and at least getting a first, you know, shot at it here, and then I'm sure you'll refine it as you go along. But the fact that you've at least ran the numbers, and it shows that there's not, you know, a ridiculously high number of like 80%, you know, going through a lower income or neighborhood or whatever. That at least, you know, you've shown that there's not something disproportionate, I guess to say. So yeah, that was a good question, Gina. Thanks.
So this is Jay with the Planning Commission. I did have one quick question, well, maybe a comment, more of a comment for Johnny, which was a wonderful presentation. I thought it was great. I was wondering on table 2, I believe it was table 2, that did have Big Bend, Gibsonton, and Brush Street. And I noticed that they were all right around, you know, 52, 55, 58. And for the public who's wondering about how these rankings occur, those could not be more different from each other. Brush Street in the urban, the grid, Water Street into downtown Tampa, and then Gibsonton and Big Bend, which are huge projects for South County. So I was wondering just a little bit of, you know, how is it that you might explain that to the public when they ask those questions of how did these rankings happen? How is one put above the other? And what does it mean for the two of them? Thanks, Johnny.
Yeah, sure thing. So I guess the way that, well, first of all, if the public asked me that question, I'd be more than happy to sit down. It almost requires a deconstruction because it's really complex, even for folks at the staff level. We tried to simplify it so that it kind of makes sense. That was our general goal. But if we want to get into the weeds, we look at these in order. So the first filter, so to speak, is employment density, whether or not it's a project that connects to major employment centers. Further on down the list, we would rank them by whether or not they're located within a major employment center. and then connection to minor job center, and then whether or not it's located within a minor job center. And then at the very bottom of the list is if it doesn't connect to any job center. All right, so that's the first filter. And that kind of gives us pole position for all of these capacity projects. And then we go through, and if there are ties, like if there are 2 projects that connect major job centers, we would break that tie with VC ratio. If it has a really high volume to capacity ratio, like 1.4, those projects would tend to be more toward the very top of the major capacity projects. And so if there's a tie following that assessment, then we would go through and look at the vehicle hours of delay to be reduced by the project being completed. You know what I'm saying? So there's really 4 separate criteria that we look at to rank these.
Yeah, thank you, because it's helpful since I can actually think of that local context and try my understanding of that context while you give me that information, and then I can a little bit better understand how that ranking works. I appreciate that, Johnny.
Yeah, no problem, Jay.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Do we have any more comments from the committee or questions? Double check.
Hey, this is Anna. Bob just came into my office a couple minutes ago, said he was having trouble getting himself off mute. Is that something that you guys can do on your end?
That's that's Bob Fry that's trying to get unmuted.
Yeah, I'm gonna try. Maybe Priya could probably do it faster than I can. Maybe we didn't make him a panelist or something. Priya, are you still with us? And if I can't do it fast enough.
Robert should be able to speak now.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, great.
Johnny, I have a quick question. I noticed you had a list of new priorities. Now, we just saw a project that's on there that has a potential conflict with a project that we haven't finished a study on. And to be a priority number 48 or 49 or something along those lines. What does that entail, and how does that impact other things that are going on around it? Because like I said, we have some conflicts, and I don't want to put out there something that can happen that possibly can't.
Yeah. Bob, I know that you're having connection problems. Are you talking about the West Shore Interchange, the Metro Rapid construction?
No, the Brush Street.
Brush Street. All the information that I have about the project is what the city of Tampa provided.
Okay.
As best as I can tell, it is, I think it's related to some safety improvements along that corridor, but that's pretty much the extent of my knowledge about it. I'd be happy to get some additional info from the city of Tampa rep. I think I saw Danny on the call.
Right, and my concern is not necessarily that it's on it, is what does it mean to be in the priority list? Because like I said, we're finishing up a PD&E in that area, and we have not finished the drainage requirements or any, and so I'm just concerned that I don't want to have something fast-tracked that can have a potential conflict.
Right.
It's just a priority that's going to be there, and it's in the work program 4 or 5 years from now. That's not a problem at all. But I just don't know what that means and what it means to our actual implementation.
This is Danny. I can speak a bit about it.
Thank you.
So we're just looking at a planning study, and we will of course, work with you and other stakeholders. But we're just starting to think about safety improvements and the north-south connections, like we've already talked about as part of your PD&E meeting. So we can talk offline more about that, but.
Okay.
Well, of course.
The reason I brought it up is I understand we've been talking as part of our other project of what could happen down there, but as you know, for PD&E, we have to stick to the actual project that we have right now, and we're in the drainage. Trying to figure out the drainage right now is, as anywhere in Tampa with drainage, it takes some time. No, that's fine, Danny. I don't, it's a planning study is not a problem. And we, of course, will work with you on that. And, we have ideas on what, agree with the ideas of what you have there. I just wanted to make sure that, we weren't going to get a potential conflict on the, on our findings with the drainage.
Okay, well, let's talk later.
Okay, all right, no problem then. We'll just leave it where it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Do we have any more comments or questions? How do I? Screen got real small. Johnny, can you pull up the screen with requested motion? Trying to get mine fixed here. Okay, if we have no further comments or questions, could I get a motion in line with the requested recommendation from Johnny?
This is Jay Collins from the Planning Commission. Make a motion to approve the Transportation Improvement Program update for fiscal year 2021, 22, 25, 26, and approve Table 2 of the TIP priority list.
Thank you very much, Jay. Can I get a second?
Gina Evans, I'll second.
Gina, thank you for that. All in favor, say aye.
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 Do we have any opposed? Say nay. Okay, thank you for that presentation, Johnny. And we will move forward with status reports. First item up is the Gandy PD&E study.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Craig Fox. I'm with the Florida Department of Transportation. I'll be presenting on the Gandy PD&E study.
Craig, I'm trying to find your name so I can make you the presenter.
Okay. Yeah, okay. It's showing as a panelist, but yeah, I don't see an option to share my screen.
Oh, I can do it if I can find you.
Okay.
You're in. Hang on, and if someone can beat me to it on my backup team.
There we go.
It's done.
Dang, darn it.
Okay. Let's screen number 2. Does everybody see that? Yes? Okay, great. All right, awesome. So yes, thank you. So my name is Craig Fox. I'm PD&E Project Manager with the Florida Department of Transportation, and we're here today to talk about the Gandy Boulevard PD&E study. This study extends from on the west side at 4th Street North in Pinellas County. It goes east along Gandy Boulevard, across Old Tampa Bay, and ends at West Shore Boulevard in Hillsborough County. The class of action we're anticipating for this PD&E is a type 2 categorical exclusion, and the purpose of this study is to reduce traffic congestion, and also improve bicycle and pedestrian accommodations. We're also going to look at certain improvements for vehicular capacity. That's the roadway widening and reconstruction, reconstructing one of the bridges over Old Tampa Bay, also having a great separation portion at Brighton Bay along with other strategic locations, and have a scheduled path that's going to cross Old Tampa Bay on the newly constructed bridge, and also have safe routes along Gandy Boulevard also. So we broke up the study into 3 main segments. The first segment is the Pinellas portion that you see in red at the top of the screen. It's around 3.5 miles in length. The second portion are the Gandy Bridges. That's in orange. And then the third portion is a Hillsborough County section. That's in yellow. And you'll be able to follow along certain parts along the bottom of the screen. We'll have it kind of broken down so you can track where we're talking about. So here we're talking about going to talk about existing conditions first, and we're starting off with the Pinellas portion, as you can see is red on the bottom. So currently existing is a 4-lane divided roadway. It's an urban principal arterial. It is a CIS corridor, which is the strategic intermodal system corridor. And it's also the existing posted speed is around 50 to 55 miles an hour, depending where you are along the corridor. Truck traffic is a little greater than 5%. And existing today, you have a shared use path on the north side of Gandy Boulevard, along with no bike lanes currently right now. You just have your 2 through 12-foot lanes along with turn lanes and medians where applicable. The next section of existing conditions is the Gandy Bridges. There are 4 lanes across those bridges, two bridges total, 2 lanes in each direction. It is also part of the CIS corridor, and they currently have standard shoulders across both bridges. Existing posted speed is around 55 miles an hour. You may have noticed it reduced a little bit while they were constructing the Selman extension, but as it completes construction, should be now all back up to 55 miles an hour now. On the eastbound bridge, that one was constructed in 1975. It is currently not able to be widened to add additional capacity, and there's around 30 years remaining in its service life. For the westbound structure, that was constructed a lot newer. It's constructed around 1996, and it was constructed to enable widening. So these existing typical sections that you see right now, as we get further along in the presentation, I'll go to the proposed. And the last section for existing conditions is the Hillsborough portion. This is 4-lane divided roadway. As you can see here in the image of the Selman extension, it was under construction, but as you're all aware, it is open now. It's also part of the 6th corridor. Existing posted speed is 45 miles an hour. Truck traffic a little greater than 6%. Currently, you don't have any bike lanes along the facility, and you do have a sidewalk that's around 6 feet on the southern side, both southern side and the northern side of the roadway. All right, now we're just going to review some of the safety statistics for this corridor. So from 2016 to 2020, around 277 of the crashes were intersection related, and around 355 of them were rear end type of crashes. So in total, we had 743 types crashes with unfortunately 9 fatalities. And we do have the location of those fatalities. I'm sorry. We do have the location of some of those bike ped fatalities located on the heat map to the right. And just clarification, so the heat map is actually the the vehicular crashes, and then the notes there are the bike and pedestrian incidents. So we had a couple crashes at West Shore, and not West Shore, I'm sorry, 4th Street, and that's also we had one of the fatalities. And then you have some other pedestrian crashes, unfortunately one fatal further east. And then you move over into Hillsborough County, and you can see the concentration of both the vehicular and pedestrian and bike crashes are also located close to West Shore on that boulevard intersection. So when we look at the contributing causes for the crashes, one of the main causes is high congestion and also a high volume of turning movements. So we're looking to reduce that by having a controlled access facility with great separation and uninterrupted flow in certain locations, along with other bike ped improvements that we'll get to also. So now I'm going to review so we have some typical sections to show you, but this is just a quick snapshot of all the different build alternatives that we're considering. So starting again in Pinellas County, what we're proposing is a 4-lane controlled access roadway with 2 lanes in each direction, along with frontage roads to support. We are also looking to have bicycle accommodations on both sides of Gandy Boulevard, both the north and south side of that roadway. And we're also looking to widen on the causeway to 6 lanes to match with the increased bridge typical section, and also have frontage roads for water maintenance and beach access to those areas. Sorry, I'm just fighting off I'm in the tail end of fighting off a cold, so my throat's a little scratchy. All right, for Gandy Bridge, we're looking to widen the existing westbound Gandy Bridge and repurpose it for eastbound travel. Again, I have some typical sections that graphically show this and explain a little bit better. But overall, basically what we're going to have on Gandy Bridges is going to be 6-lane controlled access roadway with 3 lanes in each direction. So it's going to be widened from 2 lanes on each bridge to 3 lanes on each bridge. And also we're going to have a multi-use trail linking Pinellas and Hillsborough counties. And for the final segment 3, which is Hillsborough County, we're actually going to maintain the existing typical section to today. We're not proposing any widening in the Hillsborough County portion. What we're going to do, we're going to tie in with Thea's West Extension roadway. We're also going to look at access management and different operational improvements so we can increase the safety at certain critical areas. And we're also going to look at increasing bicycle and pedestrian connectivity and safety along both sides of Gandy Boulevard also. And just FYI, so since you coming off the bridge is going to be 6 lanes, we'll just make sure that we tie that in. So we are going to have to reconstruct some portion. So for a very tiny portion, it may be 6 lanes, but it's going to shrink down to 2 lanes. We're not going to widen for existing capacity on Gandy and Hillsborough County, just to tie those segments. All right, so here's the typicals that I promised. So one thing I just want folks to pay attention to is where we're talking about the typicals. This is in Pinellas County, and this section is from 4th Street to just west of Brighton Bay Boulevard, and then from east of San Martin Boulevard to Causeway Boulevard. And it'll make more sense in the next slide because the typicals change a little bit. So this is the grade separated portion. So the goal is to have 2 lanes in each direction on the grade separated portion with frontage roads, 2 lanes to support, and then a 12-foot multi-use trail on the north side and on the south side. So we're going to reconstruct portions of the north side and also looking to build a new multi-use trail on the south side, where one does not exist today. So the right of way is proposed between 250 and 274 feet, and the design is funded under this this project number. And then, so the reason why I asked folks to pay attention to the typical section limits is because this now is between West Brighton Bay Boulevard and east of San Martin Boulevard. So between there, we're looking to have a viaduct portion. This is only just a default generic rendering of a typical section. The typical section is not going to, I'm sorry, the viaduct is not going to look like this at the end. We're just put just a default one in there so folks know this elevated roadway. So it's going to be a viaduct to this portion, again with the same 2 lanes in each direction on the grade separated portion, and then your 2 lanes in each direction on the frontage road portions. It also will maintain the multi-use trail on both the north and south sides of that roadway. Next segment are the Gandy Bridges. So I'm going to start to my right here and then move to the left with the explanation. So you have the existing eastbound bridge today that is going to be demolished since they cannot be widened because it was designed to be widened. And then the existing westbound bridge will become the new eastbound bridge. So you can see on here the darker gray portions are the existing structures today. It was built to handle the additional weight in the future, so we're able to add on these lighter gray portions at both ends of the bridge. So the proposed typical will be 12-foot lanes, so 3 lanes on each of the bridge structures with 10-foot shoulders on each side. And then to the furthest left of the screen, that is going to be a completely newly constructed structure there. That's going to facilitate, that's going to become your new westbound bridges. Same typical section as the eastbound one with 3 12-foot lanes and then 10-foot shoulders. The only difference will be the multi-use trail will be built on the north side of this, connecting Hillsborough County and Pinellas County with a trail facility. And then the last portion in Hillsborough County, so like I mentioned before, we're maintaining the existing 4-lane our frontage roads that exist today. On Gandy Boulevard, there's no widening proposed in Hillsborough County, and this shows this existing Thea settlement extension there. So no anticipated right-of-way is proposed for the Hillsborough County portion, and we're going to work we're going to have ongoing coordination with local agencies as far as what kind of trail facilities we put in there. So that's why we only have a 6-foot trail right now proposed. I'm not saying it's going to be, well, 6-foot sidewalk proposed right now. We're not saying that they can't be widened to accommodate a trail, but that's just pending ongoing discussions. And of course, operation improvements at West Shore Boulevard, because as you saw on the heat map and when we had the bike ped crash identified, a lot of the crashes kind of grouped up near that intersection. So here are the milestones of the PD&E project. So initiated in April of 2020. As you all remember, April was around the period where coronavirus was in full effect. So that put a damper on our traffic analysis because all the traffic numbers were skewed because everything dropped off a cliff, basically. So that delayed us by a little bit. That's why we kind of come a little bit later on. But we since then caught up and we're having steady progress with the PD&E. So we're ongoing with the PD&E studies the MPO presentations right now. And of course, move forward, we'll change to TPO to reflect the name accurately. And next up, we have the environmental engineering analysis documentation. We're going to come with an alternatives matrix and look at the public hearing in spring or summer of 2022. And with the earliest design segment starting in 2025. And now I'll break down just where we are with the overall funding. So the top portion is the PD&E study, and that includes both the Pinellas, Gandy Bridge, and Hillsborough portions. So that study is funded, and we're moving forward with it as is right now. As I mentioned before, we did break up these sections that we broke up the project into are also going to represent the different design and construction segments too. So starting with the Pinellas segment, as you can see in here, that's the only one that's funded for design, and that's funded for design starting in fiscal year 2025. It's not currently funded for right-of-way or construction, and both the Gandy Bridge and the Hillsborough portions currently are not funded for design or construction either. Right-of-way is only required right now in the Pinellas portion, so no right-of-way is required for the Gandy Bridge or the Hillsborough portion. And that brings us to the end of the presentation. We do have a active project website that you can select with this link here. That'll take you to our PD&E website where you can sign up for just to stay in touch with our newsletter. So when there's notice about when the public hearing is going on, you'll be able to get the notification right to your email. So definitely invite everybody to check out the website and please sign up for notifications. Now I just want to open up the floor for questions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Craig. Very thorough, and I appreciate all the graphics to go along with it. That makes it much easier to understand the scope of the project. This maybe it wasn't to scale. This is just a curiosity on the map of the bridges. Why did the trail section seem especially large to me? The bike ped trail.
Yeah, because I also, so usually we'll have a trail like around 12 feet, but you have to have additional clearances when you're dealing with higher speed traffic. So we have it a little bit wider. We have it kind of proposed to 16 feet. Of course, these are subject to design. We're only in each stage, so that that may change as we go further along. But it's to provide the additional buffer just for safety purposes.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Okay. Do we have questions from the committee?
Craig, go ahead.
It's all right, Bob. Go right ahead.
Okay. My only question was, I noticed that we have design funded, but not construction. It used to be that we would not do design without construction because we would then have to go back in and redo plans. Does that mean that you think construction funded is coming in the next by the fiscal year 2025?
Well, we certainly hope the funding's coming right now, but honestly, I really can't say whether it is or is not coming. To be honest, but what we can do as design progresses. We can continue the design and then pause it at a good point if we had to, so we don't have to do a lot of rework if that was needed.
Thank you.
No problem.
And this is Jay with the Planning Commission. I believe the PD&E will answer my question, but I was just wondering if you guys had any early indications. There's a lot of public waterfront on the Gandy side for Pinellas, and I was wondering if you guys see any impacts to that.
So you're talking about kind of like the beaches, that's you've been using recreational areas. Yeah. So we're looking to maintain that as much as possible. We definitely don't want to take that away from the public, and we're also looking to have some frontage roads to make access there just a little bit better. And even though we're going to have some portions that are grade separated, but have like the MSE wall up, we still want to allow turnarounds. So we're still going to allow some turnarounds around that area. For folks to still use it. So although it's not an official park, we're definitely not looking to take away all access from that area.
Thank you.
I just want to ask a quick question, Craig. This is Gina Torres with the TPO. Is the terminology controlled access the same as limited access? Are those interchangeable?
That's a great question, and they're actually different. So limited access is more so your interstate right of way, and controlled access is more like your kind of like US 19s, like the grade separated portion. But that's a great question. Limited access, of course, is the most restrictive, because then you it bans certain things like like a driveway getting connected to like an interstate on ramp. Of course, you don't want that happening, and certain other restrictions like that. So this is controlled access. It's not an interstate facility, so it wouldn't be limited access. But that's
okay, great. And it's kind of leads just to my second quick comment. Surprisingly, there were a lot of people I met when I was doing different surveys that traveled across the Gandy Bridge by bicycle, and it was the only way you could actually, even get across because Howard Franklin is limited access, and then, I mean, I guess you could go all the way up to Oldsmar, but not if you live down south; it's too far. So I love the trail inclusion, and I see that since the trail is only on one side of the bridge, but it's on both sides, which is great. I'm glad it's on both sides, but just, that attention be given with how to get people down to or over to the north side, wherever that happens. So that's all. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, definitely, Gina. Yeah. Our initial look at it, yeah, we're definitely making sure that there's safe pedestrian accommodations, especially when you get closer to the bridges from the south side to the north side, so that folks can easy transition over there. And we're also looking to do the same thing on the Hillsborough side, make sure that the connection is safe and serves both the north side bicycle users and the south side bicycle users also.
And if the PD&E would allow it, perhaps the loops under the bridge to connect, so it's unobstructed.
Yeah. We did take some initial looks at that, and whatever structure we put in there, number one, we're definitely not going to take out that loop underneath the structure, and since the structure is going to be higher than the one existing now today, it's going to have enough headroom in there too. But yeah, great point.
Okay, very good. Good questions. Do we have any other comments or questions from the committee? Okay, I think that does it. Craig, thank you for your presentation today.
Oh,
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I
I have one more question.
as a member of the public. This is
Oh, sure.
Christina Costa, attending on behalf of Walk Bike Tampa, nonprofit advocacy organization. And Craig, I was just wondering, really delighted to see that there's interest and desire to do expanding, the sidewalks into real multi-use trails there. They do, on the Hillsborough side, they do butt up right up to moving traffic, moving cars. So I'm just wondering, what is the desired speed that would be the outcome of modifying Gandy for the Hillsborough side? Thank you.
Sure, great question. Yeah, so we're maintaining the existing speed out there today. So right there today it's actually 45 miles an hour, and we're looking to maintain that as the same. So it's going to be, so it transitions today. You come off the bridge at 55 and it steps down to 45. So we're looking to continue that.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you. I think we're going to move on with the next status report, which is the downtown interchange package.
I successfully gave her access to presenting. I just want you guys to know that.
And her being?
Mary Lou, you might.
Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. This is actually the Section 7 aesthetics. This is a project that was just let for construction, and it just starts north of I-4 and goes on I-275 to just south of Hannah.
Hey, Mary Lou, can you identify yourself real quick by full name?
Yes, Mary Lou Godfrey, and I'm the TV Next program manager.
Okay, thanks.
So just to start off, this is an example of some of the interstate projects that we have previously constructed that followed the urban design guidelines. And that's what will be used on the I-275 project that was recently let. You can see the downtown interchange. Some of the improvements there were the wide brick sidewalks, 8-foot noise walls, and concrete staining of the interstate. Also over here to the right, I don't know if you can see my cursor. This was some of the work that was done in Ybor City as far as the 5 globe lights and the tree-lined walkways, bike lanes, and then the fountain, the tiered fountain. Over here is the airport exchange. Some of the aesthetics in that was to have clean and visually simple interchange with standardized interstate lighting in concrete stain on bridge structures. Over here, you can see the northbound I-275 from Himes Avenue to Hillsborough River. That was the entrance to the West Tampa Historic District. Some of the public art and some of the additions is lighting and noise walls. Over here, you can see the I-4 Selman Expressway Connector Project with specialty MSE walls with concrete staining and standardized interstate lighting. And then over here, you can see the Del Mabry to West Shore District, the transition from towers of West Tampa to the modern bridge towers with sails for the bay, incorporating the public art, in addition to the standardized interstate lighting and noise walls. So the project that we are talking about today is the one that widens I-275 corridor from north of I-4 to just south of Hannah Avenue. It's adding one lane in each direction and also wider outside shoulders to accommodate transit. This project aligns with the vital few. It improves safety along the corridor, enhancing mobility for drivers, and inspire innovation in its design. The project will make interchange improvements that will include bike and pedestrian enhancement, including wider sidewalks. I will talk about more about the aesthetics and noise walls as we move through the presentation. Signage will include ground mount single post and monotube spans on the interstate. The interstate lighting is shown and be real consistent with the urban design guides. The project also includes underdeck lighting, upgrades to LED for the roadway surfaces, and light at the back of the pier caps will be also installed if they're not already there for pedestrian lighting. So you can see these will be replaced with LED along with the lighting back here and under the underpasses, and if there's not, on the back of these pier caps, so the pedestrians will have better lighted facilities. I'm going to begin to show a few of the maps that identify where existing and proposed noise barriers will be located. At the bottom, you can see examples of what they look like when they're installed. The first map shows from Florabraska to north of Dr. MLK Jr. Boulevard. The solid orange line indicates where we have existing noise barriers. The green dotted line shows locations of proposed 14-foot noise barriers, and the pink line shows locations of proposed 8-foot barriers. If the noise barrier is on the ground, it will be at the shoulder location, and it'll be 14 feet. If it is on some kind of structure, it will be on 8 feet. Again, this map shows from north of Dr. MLK Boulevard to north of Hillsborough. And you can see this entire segment will have noise barriers. And then the last map shows from north of Hillsborough to Hannah. And you can see again, noise walls the entire way. Additionally, we plan to install 8 to 14-foot noise barriers along the shoulders of the roadway, but also the fencing will be removed along the frontage roads and at the inside shoulder of ramps. We will keep existing fences that are located adjacent to private property and will replace damaged sections of existing fence. We will keep the same, we will add new fencing along crossroads and where necessary to prevent access along the LA right-of-way between private property and the interstate. So if there is a noise wall, as you can see in this map, if there's an existing, this is what the existing main line would look like. If there's a wall that will be going in, we will be opening up this area to give some more buffer between the neighborhoods and the walls. And likewise, here you see a fence. In many locations, we'll be having walls here, and that will allow for this isn't exactly a one for one, but we'll have more room for buffer areas. And specialty fencing will be installed in sloped areas and those of high visibility. Here are examples of the black omega type fence that we've used on other urban design guideline projects, and the black vinyl fencing, as well as gates that will be installed on the sloped areas. So here's the black vinyl, and here's the omega fences here, and here's the gates. So as part of the walls, the MSE walls that you'll be seeing on the outside, there will be like a shell like in this section from here. And when we enter the historic district, the wall become this similar to what you've seen in other areas, like in Armenia. Howard is this redder brick colored face. As you just for specifics on Florabraska and Lake Avenue and Chelsea Street, at these underpasses, the retaining walls will have the shell finish that you will see here. And the gravity walls under the bridge will have a black omega fence here. And along the top, the sidewalk will be widened because we've taken this sloped wall here and shortened it or cut it back so that there's will be a wider sidewalk back here. In this case, under MLK, the bridge will be, there will be a retaining wall under the bridge, but it will be, we will be taking the slope pavement completely out, and there'll be a full height retaining wall, and there'll be even a wider sidewalk at this location. When we enter the Osborne Avenue, which is you start into the historic district, you can see that there'll be the brick texture here. And then again, you'll see the omega fence. You'll see a retaining wall that will take some of the slope out. It will add wider sidewalk here. And when we are finished with the project, the city of Tampa is coming back to put some artwork here. They are also developing a stamp that can be put in the sidewalk here and also on the other side that will tie with the artwork that is being done here. Again, on Hillsborough Avenue, you can see that the texture will be the brick texture here. This will be a smooth texture under here. The wall has been cut back for your wider sidewalk here. And this art will be done by the city of Tampa also after the project is finished. And the stamp will tie with the artwork that's being done with the city, their artists there. And this will be done with the project. 2 of the concrete slabs of the sidewalk will be left for the city to come out and put their stamp in there. I mentioned the construction was let in May 26. Construction is expected to begin in the summer and should be completed by the late 2024. And like all of our projects, landscaping is completed following construction. And additionally, the public art will be installed following construction. And just a little stay safe message. Safety is DOT's top priority, and many will be traveling this summer with family and friends. And just make sure your car is road ready for your trips, and remember to slow down and stay cool for safe summer travel. And I thank you.
So Jeff, I think Lisa's going to add a couple of slides. So I don't know if we should ask questions maybe after Lisa's finished. Okay.
Okay. If
I
Lisa, if that's accurate, then go ahead and bring yours up, and we can just make sure, Mary Lou, that you stay on the line. We can't hear you, Lisa, if you're speaking. Okay, I'm assuming.
So Lisa, I gave you presenter controls. If you can unmute, there you go. What's up?
She's saying I can't unmute.
Okay, now you can hear me?
Barely.
Okay, turn it up.
Why are we not hearing volume?
All right. Which screen of mine are you seeing?
It's hard to hear you, Lisa.
Yeah,
It sounds like you're
I
whispering.
can hear you a little better, but still very low.
All right. How about now?
Better. I think that's good enough. Right now, we're seeing the cover sheet for the meeting itself.
Okay. All right. So now when I
Yeah, we can hear you.
Now you should see this slides, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just quickly reminding you of some other parallel work. My esteemed colleague Wayne Reynolds was the project manager for the environmentally sensitive noise wall white paper, which kind of got us to looking at the noise walls that, knowing and anticipating they were coming along this portion of the roadway. So just to remind you that it was a request that we look into it. We looked into it for public health reasons, as well as, environmental and aesthetic reasons. So, this is the background of that noise wall, but it's going to lead you into what we've been doing since that. So again, it's going to help. So, and then this is the area, you can see that dark blue is where we have our most communities of concern and are most impacted by the air concentrate, pollutants along the roadway. So the white paper looked at technology and aesthetic treatments. So you can see some of the things that were studied in research. The white paper is on our website if you'd like to dive into it further. Some other things were like the mitigation using plant materials. And then here's a local example in South Florida. They had the clear walls along a golf course down there that they piloted several years ago. Here's an example in Nashville. Then Beth Alden and I attended the Transportation Research Board conference at Washington, D.C., and we learned about a special product here. You can see this double wall thing that helps push the emissions way high up into the air, which reduces the pollution by 50% for those homes on the other sides. They were also transparent in other colors. There's a product named Smog Stop. And we thought, oh, this is cool. So we looked into it. Okay, I'm going to tell you the update on that. Okay, so when Wade brought this through the committees, including TAC, it was endorsed by the different committees, and some of the committees had comments. Livable Roadways supported the recommendations, and one of the recommendations was to form a noise wall working group to follow up on the recommendations. So that's when I inherited it. Because I am the Livable Roadways liaison. Forgot to say my name earlier, Lisa Silva, MPO staff, TPO staff. So the TPO accepted the report with the recommendation to form the committee. So we did that. We formed the committee and went to work on looking at the recommendations. One of those was to look into that Smog Stop product. We did get the owners of the company through some conference calls with Department of Transportation staff. All products that are on our roadways have to meet certain standards and specifications and testing. So the group started to look at getting it approved on the US DOT's recommended products list. But then COVID hit, and lo and behold, Smog Stop's treatment that they put on the walls also appeared to be effective for COVID. So they got kind of, more busy dealing with that instead of getting approved on the US DOT list. But we also learned of pilots in our neighboring county in Pasco. So we went on a field trip to see this product here. You see a little close up of it, and you can see that it's flowering and flourishing. What they've done here is got this at a rest stop in Pasco County along I-75. So we went and looked at it, and this is something that DOT staff here that you see there and City of Tampa staff attended the field trip, and we looked at this had been established for a year, but look how well it's growing up these trellis screens, or green screens for short is another name for it. So we were like, hey, given we can't apply Smog Stop, along the noise walls at 275 and I-4 when we have adjacent communities of concern that are experiencing health issues already, maybe we could at least mitigate a little bit of that, take out some of the emissions and toxins with, the green approach. So that's what we looked at. We also looked at the construction plans that Mary Lou just presented when the City of Tampa staff were commenting on that. We, looked into and followed up with that. And then we requested them to come to the committees today, so that's why you're getting to see this. So here's some more highlights of the field trip of the product that we're looking at. So you can see human scale there. So they can be taller. They're metal, mesh. They had 2 different vines growing on them, and they were established without any irrigation or water treatment. You know, they just got going and they haven't been maintained at all. So they haven't even been trimmed in the year of establishment. So all those are very positives in considering the, you know, harsh environment along the interstate, you know, the downtown interchange to apply this product. So it was perceived that this would be something to go ahead and pursue in the final stages. But as Mary Lou said, they'll construct the walls, and then after that's when the landscaping gets done. As with any landscaping treatments to the roadways that the Department of Transportation owns, things that are done above and beyond what their, you know, standards allocate, is the local jurisdiction. Since the downtown interchange is within the city limits, that's why we've been having City of Tampa staff from the Parks and Recreation Department look at this treatment and these plant materials to see if they would want to enter into an interlocal agreement with the Department of Transportation to do it. And so far, everything's a go. So again, the working group's continuing to work with staff to make sure we, you know, take advantage of those opportunities as they progress. The Department of Transportation District 7's landscape architect, Michael Kidde, also mentioned that there's another installation going in so they have that one in Pasco County at the rest stop, and that went well. So now they're trying it in an actual roadway application, and it happens to be local. It's in New Tampa, along I-75. So, and then this with their dates, they were anticipating their letting date was September 21. And then that would be a local example we could go visit and look at as well after it gets going. So that's my little update on the work that the Noise Wall Working Group's been doing in partnership with the Department of Transportation. And we're so excited they're here today to help tell us the story about what's going on. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. That was between both of them, it covered quite a lot of ground there. Let me see. I guess, I mean, as a representative of EPC, I certainly endorse the noise walls, the reductions in emissions more so. You know, there's varying studies I've read, but certainly on the particulate side, there's definite improvement. I need to do more research. I'm curious about the smog reducer element that you spoke about. As far, you know, my one comment would be, I know, Mary Lou, when you were showing some pictures of like where you're removing fence and there's going to be kind of a buffer area, certainly, and I think this goes into what Lisa would say, any opportunity to expand the greenery around that side, not only for aesthetics, but also for, you know, the emissions improvements of just, you know, adding, you know, nature and natural reduction and, you know, oxygen generators there would certainly be endorsed by EPC, and I'm sure by many others involved with it. And I'm curious to, you know, hear more as we go along on the green screen. And I will say, I don't think you're going to get a lot of noise reduction from that, but it is great from the aesthetic side and from the improvement on the you know, the looks, and then just adding nature to the area. So
yeah, if I wasn't clear, the green screen is in front of the noise wall, you know, so it would be an addition. So the noise wall has some benefit, right, and then the green screen would be an addition and kind of soften the look. And yes, when I mentioned that we also looked at and encouraged City of Tampa's, you know, we reviewed their comments, encouraged them to lush it up and put as many trees and stuff on the other sides of the wall and adjacent to the community that's impacted to clean the air as well. So stellar landscape architect Carla Price has been coordinating with us, and she's a member of the working group, and she did that. They've committed to what they feel they can comfortably and safely maintain for landscaping in their interlocal agreement with the Department of Transportation. So it is a very urban constrained right away. So there's only so much lushness that you can squeeze in there, but they are attempting to do that. And then Jeff, as you know, there's also a project we're about to get kicked off this fall for some air monitoring network. So some extra personal individual monitors throughout the community to see how we're doing, and then see how these things impact how we're doing with air quality and stuff.
Right, we'll have to interact with Amy Stewart on that, because I think the focus was going to be on the Monroe area, the Monroe station near Julie B. Lane Park was going to be an initial starting point. But I mean, I'm sure that the project and scope can be expanded to kind of at least touch on maybe a before and after, or would be great to get a before right now, and then as this project goes along to get some after, you know, at least from the community side.
Right, and we'll bring that project when it's ripe and ready and scoped out and stuff. But I didn't want you to think so it's complementary to this. So I'm inheriting that project as well as this, since it's all tied into it.
Okay, all right, great. All right, do we have any other questions from the committee?
We're running a little bit late, but I do want to make a comment as a person who lives within I can throw a ball pretty far. So it's like right there by my house, the interstate. I really like what I'm seeing, Mary Lou, because although you guys like to speed through and maybe don't want that canyon effect, it is really loud. And I thought over the 30 years that I've lived there that I would not hear it as much, but it is unpleasant. So having a wall is really helpful for those of us who live in that neighborhood, and also going under the interstate. The walls, I hope that the same treatment on Osborne will be on Chelsea. The walls will help with the people that live under the bridge. Well, not to have them there, which makes me feel a little bit bad about it, but it is a little nerve-wracking to go for a walk or a run. But the lighting under there sounds great. There's Hillsborough High School is right past Osborne, and there's a lot of kids walking through and underneath there. So I'm just really excited about what you guys have lined up. Thank you.
All right, great. No other questions or comments? I think that does it. Thanks both of you for the presentation today. All right, last item up is the T-Barter Transit and Telework Survey.
Oh, Chris Jadek with T-Barter. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you see my screen?
It says go to webinar right now, so probably not.
Do it right now. It says stop sharing screen. I want to make sure I've got the right screen up there. Give me 1 second.
No problem.
I learned, Chris, that you can actually just keep clicking. You don't have to like unshare and then reshare, but however you want to do it.
You see anything now?
The same thing.
See the same thing.
Your email.
Sorry about this. I'm trying to, first I have a chance to take a look with the, because I do see I have the presenter controls, show screen. I'm clicking through the various options that I have here that give me, you tell me when you see the
there you go. Got it.
You see my title screen?
Yep.
Perfect. All right, appreciate that. All right, I realize you're running a little late, and I will move through this rather quickly here. I need about maybe 10, 15 minutes. A little background on our transit and telework survey as to why we did it. It was a year ago this month that the T-Barter board approved our RTDP, Regional Transit Development Plan, which is really an unfunded plan that outlines opportunities for regional transit to connect our 5-county region. And from that, we started doing an information tour. It was during one of these presentations that I think our executive director, David Green, was talking to Pinellas County commissioners. And the question came up from one of the commissioners is, what does the business community think of the RTDP, of connecting us among 5 counties? And we had not done a post-RTDP survey. So that got us to thinking that we may want to do this. We also were in the midst of a pandemic right then, and we realized what was really top of mind was telework and how everybody's work routines were changing. And we're already starting to consider some of the questions as to what that's going to mean for transit and transportation coming out of the pandemic. So we combined those two into a survey that we launched in January of this year, asking about telework attitudes, transit attitudes, and about attitudes regarding T-Barter. And as you can see from that screen right there, over 500 responses, and the questions were on the 3 topics I talked about. Important to point out, this was a convenience sample, meaning that we sent it out to as many people as we possibly could. We had great engagement from the MPOs and from the counties and city governments, as well as our own channels. But essentially, anybody who could see this survey could get it. And this is a conversation starter. No policy is being decided from this. The results are rounded to the nearest percentage, so if these don't add up to 100%, you'll know why. So to start with, from the survey, we wanted to ask, where do people live? Not surprisingly, most are from Hillsborough County. That's a little bit higher than the proportion of Hillsborough County is within the 5-county T-BARTA region, Pinellas County being second. And then we wanted to know, where do you work? Most people work in Hillsborough County. The difference we saw here was that those who responded to this survey, those who lived in Hillsborough County worked in Hillsborough County. They really did not go to Pinellas or Pasco. Whereas Pinellas County, as you remember from the past slide, 22% of our respondents lived in Pinellas, but 11% of them worked in another county. That certainly includes Hillsborough, but also Pasco and Manatee to the north and south. We also wanted to ask, do you manage or lead employees? Because as you remember, the genesis for this survey was, what does the business community think about T-BARTA? So we wanted to make sure that we were able to separate the business community from the general public. And you can see we had a pretty nice split there, 44 to 56%. Among business leaders, what describes your occupation? We had a nice mix there. Business owners making up 10%, executive leadership, such as CEOs or C-suite level, another 11%, and management made up about 45%. And then when we asked business people, prior to the pandemic, how many of your employees teleworked at least once a week? Not unexpectedly, there was not a lot of telework. 59% said they didn't have any telework whatsoever, and only 6% had more than 50%. And understandably, when we asked during the pandemic, how much telework did you have? Those numbers pretty much flipped. More than 50%, 64% said they were offering telework more than once a week. Not surprising results. So from that, we wanted to know, well, what was your experience with it? Was it good, bad, or indifferent? And so this question was, tell us what your telework experience was. Was it positive in that employees were more productive than expected? Was it neutral? Or was it negative in that your employees were less productive than expected? 53% of the business population said it was a positive experience. About a third said it was neutral, and 6% had a negative experience. And that led us into asking, what will your future telework policy be? And this is one of the most interesting findings, I think, of the survey, is that 60% of the business leaders in this survey say they are going to permit more telework after the pandemic than they were providing before the pandemic. So certainly the experience that we all went through during the pandemic, at least from the results of this survey, as business leaders are more open to more telework. And as we know, that may have an impact on our transit and transportation in the future. 11% said their policy is going to be exactly the same. 7%, possibly those who had the negative experience, say they're actually going to be offering less telework than they did prior to the pandemic. And 21% just don't know at this point. Their policy is still up in the air. Then we asked non-management people who are classified as employees the same set of questions. First of all, prior to the pandemic, how often did you telework? 3 out of 4 said they never teleworked. During the pandemic, how often did you telework? It flips. 3 out of 4 said they were teleworking more than 50% of the time. So what was that telework experience among employees? Very close to what business leaders were telling us. 58% said they were more productive than they expected to be, and they classified it as positive. 26% neutral and 5% negative. And if you recall the management slide I had up just a minute ago, that's pretty close to what managers were telling us regarding their telework experience. And we also found that employees expect that there's going to be more telework offered to them after the pandemic. This question being, what will your organization's future telework policy be after the pandemic? 53% say they will permit more telework than they did prior to the pandemic, with 25% really up in the air right now. Very close to what business leaders were telling us. We also asked a few questions about mass transit prior to the pandemic. How did you use mass transit? The majority of folks, 88%, said they did not use mass transit at all. Should not come as a surprise to us because we know we are very dependent on the automobile here. After the pandemic, how will you use mass transit? We really didn't find anything definitive here from these numbers. The middle line, I will use mass transit just the same as I did before, regardless of whether I used it at all. So that 88%, a lot of those folks who say I didn't use it before, I'm not going to use it after the pandemic, they would probably fall into this 60% category. 7% say they'll use mass transit more, with 4% saying less. A third, about 29%, really are up in the air. That might be the most interesting finding from this question. And one of the reasons why we are promoting T-BART as a van pooling program now, we think commuting habits might be in flux and starting to change. So there may be more opportunity for people to consider van pooling as we pull out of the pandemic. And related to that, we asked a similar question. How do you use alternative transportation, those being the carpools, vanpools, biking and walking? Nearly 4 out of 5 said they did not use alternative transportation prior to the pandemic. Afterwards, how will you use it? Very similar to the sentiment that they had on transit, as you can see there, but really 27%, I should say there, 1 in 4 really don't know if they will use alternative transportation. There may be some opportunity here for people to be rethinking biking, walking, carpooling, and the like. And I think a lot of this may relate also to telework. If you think back to our telework slides, they expect there to be more telework, but there's still some uncertainty with telework as we get back into our new routines. So it's quite likely that the 27% who don't know how they're going to use alternative transportation also don't know exactly how they're going to work in terms of how much telework they might have in the future. So that's still a little bit in flux. The final set of slides I'm going to go through here relate to Tampa Bay's attitudes regarding our economy, our transit system, and TBARTA's role in helping build out regional transit. So we started off with, how do you feel about the Tampa Bay economy compared to similar regions? We wanted people to be thinking regionally. How do you think about us? And you can see we get pretty favorable marks, at least among this crowd. Nearly 50% said that they think our economy is either much better than average or better than average. Then when we asked, how do you rate Tampa Bay's transportation system compared to similar regions such as Atlanta, Seattle, Phoenix, those types, the numbers start to slip a little bit here. 32% rate is below average, and 22% say it's well below average. Transportation system, and this is not related to any particular county. Keep in mind, this is across 5 counties, and we're talking everything from airports to highways to any type of transportation you might have. And then we asked the same question related to public transit, and the numbers continue to slip even more, as you can see. How do you rate Tampa Bay's public transit system? Not any transit system in particular. This is the 5-county area compared to other regions. And you can see 42% say it is well below average. With that, we wanted to ask a few questions about regional transit. Is there a desire for more investment in transit that connects our counties together? And of course, you know, that's what TBART is all about. And you can see we got very strong support for the concept of regional transit. 55% strongly agreed that Tampa Bay would benefit from more of that. 27% agreed, so strong numbers there. We asked if people thought that regional transit would increase economic opportunity, because as you know, that's one of the key reasons why we've advocated for regional transit, because it increases the economic quality of life and vibrancy of our entire region. Again, very strong numbers with 84% either agreeing or strongly agreeing that improved regional transit would increase economic opportunity for workers. Then we started to move into a couple of questions about TBARTA. We noted that Envision 2030, which is our RTDP, is an unfunded plan. It's really a conversation starter about what we could be with more regional connectivity. And we asked, what priority do you place on increased investment in regional transit? Because that's more than the $64,000 question for all of our transportation. Is how we fund these projects. And you can see we've got some pretty good numbers there. 46% say high priority, and another 16% said it should be a highest priority. We then asked about TBARTA. How important is it for one agency such as TBARTA to lead regional transit planning in cooperation with FDOT, county governments, MPOs, and transit agencies? And we added that in there because we certainly believe that TBARTA has some branding issues to discuss with our people. We're not looking to change the system we have. We're looking to be partners and bring added value to the existing local entities that already exist out there. So that's why that question was phrased the way that it was. And you can see that these respondents do find there's some value in having one entity lead the regional training aspect of it. This question was very similar. How important is it for one agency such as TBARTA to expand and operate regional transit in cooperation with our partners? 29% say extremely important, 43% very important. And then we asked about a dedicated budget support for TBARTA. And of course, I'm sure everybody's been following the news. As you know, we have to go to the state legislature every year and we ask for funding. The legislature did include us in this year's budget, and the governor vetoed the TBARTA funding. So that's an issue we do have to deal with. But at least from this survey's perspective, those who responded think that it should be a very high priority that Florida provide budget support for TBARTA so we can work on regional transit. I have a couple more slides I want to share here because I thought it was important to separate what the Hillsborough only sentiment was compared to the other 4 counties. So take that question I just had there. How important is it for Florida to provide dedicated budget support for T-BARDA. You can see when we look at the Hillsborough County only respondents, we still have very strong support for budget support for T-BARDA. And when you take the other 4 counties, take Hillsborough County out, still there's a lot of support there too. So the numbers are very similar on that question. 2 more questions I'll share with you. How do you think Tampa Bay would benefit from increased regional transit regardless of the mode? Again, Hillsborough County respondents to our survey did show that they support increased regional transit, think that we would benefit from that. 51% say strongly agree compared to the outlying 4 counties that say 60% agree. So really those numbers really match up very similarly. And the final question I'll share with you here today is, how important is it for one agency such as T-BARDA to expand and operate regional transit? And again, Hillsborough County was pretty supportive of that question, really mirroring some of the results that we saw from the 4 outlying counties. With that, I'm going to wrap it up, but I'll share one final slide with you. All the results of this survey have been posted on our website, tbarda.com. You'll find a tab and you can under Transit and Telework survey. There are other questions in there, but I really share the top line ones with you. But if you have any more questions about that, you can find all the survey results there. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up and stop sharing my screen. Open any questions you might have.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. You covered a lot of ground there, and I appreciate you being succinct. This has been a long meeting, but I think your survey was very thorough. I can't say the results surprised me a whole lot, especially on the telework side. But it's interesting to see the what we figured was the case to actually be backed up with some hard data. So and I can certainly speak. I know with our office, we haven't developed what our final program is going to be going forward. So there's still a lot in flux as far as what it's going to end up, how we're going to be landing in the future with in-office versus out-office and so forth. So with that, do we have questions from anybody on the committee?
Can I just add a comment? I loved it. I agree. I mean, I looked at the presenters today, and I know a couple of them were in St. Pete and others were in other different parts of the county, and attendees are able to participate in these public meetings so much easier than having to come down here and find parking or get babysitters. And so I'm glad to see that there's a move to allow for more of this from the employers. That was good to hear.
Thank you.
I agree. Do we have any other comments or questions? Okay, well, Chris, I appreciate you providing that to us today, and
you're welcome.
We are going to go forward closing out the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right.
Jeff, there was something under new business, but I think without a lot of the staff have kind of dwindled here. At least I don't know if you guys realize it, but some of our people in our room here have gone. This was something maybe I can bring up earlier in the next time we meet, but it was in a discussion that about CSX, and that the city was wondering, the ability to be able to use some of their right of way or land that they own. I think it was for the CSS, and maybe it was also talking about some other projects. And we were going to just ask for some weigh in on, agency owned land and being able to maybe allow other agencies to use that land. But that's something. Why don't we flush that out next time when we have more people here?
Okay, you were going to ask it from the committee if they had any input on it. Okay.
I mean, I might send
I agree. Yeah, I would prep, let's kind of prep them with an email prior to say, hey, we're going to ask this question formally during the meeting, but maybe they'll have some insight that they can research prior to the meeting itself. But no, I think it's a reasonable question to ask. Okay, very good. And this may seem silly, but I'm not always involved in the loop here, but are you all officially TPO now and not MPO? So now it's officially Transportation Planning Organization. So I know it's been kind of a soft rollout, and but going forward, it still sounds funny when I say it, but I think it's good though. Actually, when I talked to somebody about it, they thought it was a great idea because they said it really kind of fleshes out exactly what your purpose is. So, okay. Any other old or new business from the committee? Okay, hearing none, I think we will move forward to closing the meeting. I don't know the date, but it'll be should be the first Monday of actually July. I think is a
yeah. I think we recess in July, and we'll meet back in August, and I'll send out a reminder. to you guys.
I believe you're correct. All right, with that, we will close out the meeting. Thanks everyone.